Notice is hereby given that the Board of Directors of the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District of the County of Jefferson, State of Colorado, will hold a regular meeting at 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 13919 West Utah Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado, 80228. This meeting will be held for the purpose of conducting such business as may come before the board. This meeting is open to the public. Virtual meeting only tonight. Due to the recent Jefferson County Public Health Order, the district will hold this meeting by a video/conference call. To attend, please go to https://web.zoom.us/j/895-332-25776, or you can call 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting ID 895-3322-5776. To troubleshoot issues with connection at the time of the meeting, please follow the link https://support.zoom.us/hc/200305593-troubleshooting. If you still experience issues, email customer service@greenmountainwater.org and our IT staff will assist you as soon as possible. The district does not discriminate on the basis of race, age, national origin, color, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or disability in the provisions of services. People with disabilities needing reasonable accommodation to attend or participate in a district board meeting can call 303-985-1581 or email customer service@greenmountainwater.org for assistance. Please give notice as far in advance as possible so we can accommodate your request. I'm going to move to agenda item number 1, a call to order, declaration of a quorum. Jeff Baker here.
Karen Morgan here.
Dave Garner here.
Alex Plotkin here.
You're muted, Todd.
Todd Hooks here.
Okay, we have all 5 directors that have, they're here, so I declare a quorum. I will move into agenda item number 2, directors matters, disclosure matters. Do the directors have anything to disclose at this time?
No.
No.
Okay, I will close number 2. I will move to agenda item number 3, approval of additions to deletions from the agenda. Are there any of these 3 variables?
Last Thursday, I suggested that I might offer a suggestion to remove some items tonight.
Okay.
I thought about that, and my initial thought was that we might want to defer comments on things that the new district manager ought to participate in and hear our views, and neither are present. So I've thought about that and decided I don't want to do that, but I would just suggest that we keep those topics to a minimum so that we can, when we have our new director, we can have those full discussions and he or she can be the benefit of our wisdom or lack of wisdom, as it may be.
Understood.
So,
Any other comments from the directors?
I would fully second that sentiment.
Okay.
I apologize for being foolish and not thinking it through last Thursday. It was obvious to me when I thought about it.
It sounded good at the time, Dave. I was with you.
Well, story of my life.
All right, I will close agenda item number 3 and move on to agenda item number 4, public comment. Limit 5 minutes per person. Per past motion of the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District Board of Directors, May 11th, 2021. Members of the public wishing to address the board during the public comment period are asked to keep their comments civil and related to the items in the agenda or to the conduct of the district business. Members of the public wishing to address the board will be recognized by the board to maintain proper decorum. Since the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation Board values your input, we always offer additional opportunities for the public to provide comments by using the district's email system or by phoning into customer service in the event they do not get on during the meeting during the period set aside for the public comment. So do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
We do.
Who do we have, Jesse?
We had someone with their hand raised.
That was Austin. He was asking me a question, but we settled it through text.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anyone with their hand raised currently at the moment.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a going, and anyone?
David?
Okay,
No, I'm just observing.
okay. We will go ahead and close public comment and we will move on to agenda item number 5, approval of the minutes. Subset A, January 11th, 2022, regular meeting minutes. I motion to pass the January 11th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
I'll
Second.
second that motion. Oh, sorry. Good enough?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Do we have an official second? Is that Dave?
Mr. Gardner.
Okay, we have discussion. Call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All in against, say nay. We have 5 yays, 5 yeses, 0 nays to approve the January 11, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Thank you all.
Okay, we will close agenda item number 5 and we will move to agenda item number 6, maintenance report with Austin Pantano. Austin, you have the floor. Austin, are you there? Or is Kristen, are you doing this?
Austin is here. Austin, try pressing *9 to unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. *6. I was hitting *9. So the endpoints are still at a slow pace. I'm hoping to get some better information this month from Badger on some of the issues they're facing with the fixed network. Once we get that up and going, then we can kind of pick up the pace on those and catch back up. We had 2 main breaks, both with some low times for outages. One was at an hour, one was roughly at 15 minutes. Typical breaks of ground shifting, so nothing out of the ordinary there. And just as a precaution, we've stepped up with the fire hydrants and wanted to just make sure all the operations are working with those. So we've followed Denver Water's specs basically on those, which is go to the hydrant, ensure water's flowing, pressurize it, make sure it drains, all those things. That number I had was a few days ago is the 559 mark out of our roughly 1,200. As of today, we got to about 860. So got everything basically up to maintenance standards that were out of date just by a little bit. So those are all nice and caught up here. Should be finished by at least tomorrow with all the ones that are currently needing maintenance. The new communication tower we installed at Dunston has a lot bigger base and is more stable. So we're hoping that we don't run into any more issues with the high winds causing us issues up there. And hopefully this month, most likely going to be next week now, we can start decommissioning the tower at the high school since we've established an alternate route to essentially keep our comms up and running. That did allow TELUS to kind of move up to the blue tank where we have other ones. So they're going to be off of that tower also, and they'll just have a small spot up at the blue tank that's out of the way for us, that they can keep up their comms for internet up and running. That's all right. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, I had Austin on the fire hydrants. Do they have to take those to full flow?
No, you're generally just wanting to make sure that flow is, you essentially have water there. So we operate them, basically open them, make sure water flows out of there. We clear the companion run there. So sometimes they're flowing them for 5 minutes, sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes 10. You just basically, to ensure you got clean water there too, and got pressures along with that. So we're updating GIS pressures throughout the district too. So
Okay, yeah, my experience with hydrants has been usually the hydraulic shock will cause some leaks somewhere for whatever reason. It just always inevitably does. So that's why I was kind of curious. These 2 leaks we had, were these in the areas located close to these hydrants?
no, these actually all happened prior to that, and they were just typical ground shifting beam breaks. Nothing that was a pressure or hydraulic issue causing those. But generally speaking, it's the operations of how fast you open them and how slow you, or how fast you close them, that cause those hydraulics surges and pressures that cause those. So we open them real slow and close them real slow so that we don't run into that.
Okay. Well,
Hey,
good
Austin.
job. Breaks. I appreciate the quick turnaround on those.
Yeah, I would second that, Austin. Thank you so much for getting on that. And also question, and you don't have to answer now. I was just wondering, so again, they were writing how in Superior, they were literally just running the tanks dry. If hypothetically that was to, happen around here, do we have enough, basically pump capacity to keep refilling the tanks? Well, since we are at Denver Water's mercy, if we were to come to one of those never should have happened scenarios, do you think the water will keep flowing? You don't have to answer that either.
Yeah, I mean, no, it depends on the scenario.
Yeah.
From what I've heard out at Superior, fire hydrants were left open. All the service lines were open. So in that kind of circumstance, I mean, you could never really, I couldn't put 100% on it, but we have quite a bit of redundancy in the ability to move water from zone to zone. We can open up a boundary valve that would allow, blue to flow to brown if we need to be there. So we do have a lot of, backup water that way. We have had a couple close calls on, the tank draining down, getting ready to pump up, and we had a major main break that lost 300,000 gallons in, 45 minutes. So we've had those big surges like that, and we've never ran out of water. So
Okay.
between the pumps all being set up and redundancy through pumps, I feel like we'd be able to, keep up in a pretty major scenario, but you can't really
I
plan for
understand.
that apocalyptic
Well,
craziness.
yeah.
So I hope we never get there.
Hopefully not. Yeah. And also as you're you guys are working through these things, please, if you see something glaring where, it needs to be put in a shopping list, to that list we've always talked about. What are the top 5-10 things to do capital improvements on? If you see a thing like that, just like a Tamarisk, you brought up a very good point, how that would make your life easier if you had redundancy there. If you see something like that somewhere in the district too, specifically related to these recent events where like we could use a, more than just a Band-Aid, please, like add it to the list.
Yeah, yep, that's our goal and our intent all the time whenever we find something is to bring it to you guys and
Thank you.
let you guys make that decision.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Austin. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Just another comment in addition to that, following on your inquiry, Alex, I reached out to Julie Seagren at Denver Water
Yes.
and asked her to figure out who at Denver Water would be best to come and give a presentation to the board in an executive session to discuss emergency response and that coordination that would be needed in a situation like that. And so she's looking at who best to do that. They've had some turnover kind of in that area recently, but she'll be getting back to me with someone who could speak and offering some times. Definitely that would be an executive session to the board and to staff because it's emergency preparations and so forth. And to accommodate their staff, I offered that potentially we could, start a meeting like at 4 or something like that instead of 6 in the evening. Because, but we can see how that goes. So I'll let you know when she gets back to me with some times for that.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sure.
That's one of the primary concerns. I'm actually not as, like Austin said, if one of our pipes just has a shift break or something that happens, but I'm more concerned about the back end water supply, coming from Denver at some point, will something run dry somewhere in case one of these never should have happened scenarios, because again, they are our supplier. So yeah.
Well, I know, one of her first comments too was that the district is well situated in terms of the numerous reservoirs we have and the capacity that we have already stored. So that would help at least the forward end of that situation. And then how that water is passed through and throttled to other folks in some kind of emergency, how that's coordinated would be more of what that representative would talk about.
Yep. And this to me falls under that thing that I always keep yammering about is this is to me one of those safety factor discussions. I never really want to be at that 100% of, well, it's fine on a normal day. Well, what if it's not a normal day? So yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Kristen. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, we'll close out agenda item number 6 on maintenance report. We'll move to agenda item number 7, engineering matters. Terry, are you ready? You're on deck.
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. The first item of business is the capital improvements project. We've been working with American West, as you know, who was, we had high bids, but they agreed to remove their water improvements from their proposal, which is where they had, their highest prices. So that was good. As we discussed, we also added some additional sewer pipes, larger diameter, to the project, and they were willing to add those. They give us pricing. The board may recall, we've showed you in the past spreadsheets. Bear Creek Water and Sanitation District has capacity in these sewers. So depending on where in the sewer line they are, Bear Creek will pay 20% or 30% of the cost. So that's been presented in the past, but I failed to mention it last week, and there's been some time in between. So just a reminder there that'll reduce the price. We went back and forth getting experience from them with sewer lining projects, and they got back with me, gave me some references. I asked for a few more specifically related to the bypass pumping. They got me more information. I talked to them. Overall, their references were all good. the most recent one, which related to the bypass pumping, that person who actually worked with Velocity Construction, who did one of our pump station improvements, said they worked with them, renting them pumping equipment, and they were, they did a good job and were good to work with. I've also been having a conversation on this same topic with Bear Creek Water and Sanitation District and their engineer, and they are on board with proceeding. So if the board agrees, and I've had multiple conversations with staff on the same topic. So if the board sees fit, we would recommend finalizing, award of contract, because if it's an adjustment to the normal bidding process, throwing out the water and adding some other elements. Our typical approach would be to execute a change order to the contract, addressing those items to be entered into concurrently. And that would be addressed in the award, so that that was all taken care of before the final agreement was signed. And that would all be run by Dylan to get his approval of the format. So if the board sees fit, I had another conversation with Austin. The staff is on board with proceeding. We'll follow through with American West and start preparing the documents to award a contract and proceed towards an agreement.
My question would be, is Austin, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Just generally speaking, is American West like okay to work with for you guys?
Yeah, just kind of going through that with Terry. I'm looking over all the stuff that he put out with checking references and all that. I personally haven't done anything with American West, but I mean, they didn't have one bad review. So basing it off of that, I can't really say that they would be bad.
Yeah, no, I'm not like looking for a good bet. I'm just more concerned with, in the past, you guys probably have worked, better with some people than others. So you don't have like, they don't turn out to be a pain for you guys. So.
Yeah, like I said, just, haven't done anything with them. So hopefully, they'll be good.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's a fair question, Alex, of course. The references we reached out to were multiple. They've done a number of projects for the town of Erie, including a 30-inch, this isn't sewer, but they've done sewer and water, but they did a 30-inch water line with the town of Erie that we were involved with. And our experience was the same as all of the references. One of the references, they were lining, similar to sewer lining, a large dam, 3 dam outlets up in the mountains, and their reference said they got up there and they did not fully, even though they'd taken a look, the access was really tough getting the equipment in, and they said they got in there, they didn't whine or complain, and they got the job done, and they were pleased with the work they did. So, that's we've had a little bit of personal experience with them, but short of that, the best we can do is reach out and get feedback from others.
That's all I got. Thank you.
So is that an official motion that we need to approve that change of scope, or is that okay to do? Any objections to that course of action?
I think I'm good,
Me too.
and I don't think we require a motion on that, do we?
No, just want to make sure that he is okay to proceed.
Yeah, that's a Dylan question. Do we need to modify anything here or anything official for us to do, Dylan?
No, it should be fine to proceed with just verbal authorization.
Okay, proceed. Terry.
Okay, very good. And again, we'll put those documents together and run them by Dylan, since, you know, it's not the normal straight award the way the project was bid, so that he can review those. All right, I will proceed with that. Thank you. The tank warranty, the red zone tank. Austin has been rightly concerned with trying to get that tank back in service. So I spoke with Greg Smith at Cablaco, and he followed with the same position that he's had in the past, that they understand the district wanting to get it into service at some point, and they're willing to get in there and remove the lining. He knows the district doesn't have staff. They did say they hope the district might, you know, assist them a little bit with disposal of materials or this or that, but they know they have the staff and the equipment to do it properly. However, the caveat was they would like to see the report, so that if they think they want to get in there and take a few more samples before working on the lining, they have the opportunity to do that.
So is that a form of a question, Terry?
Yeah, yes. Would the board like to give them the draft report so he can review it and do what they may need to do if they think they want more samples of the lining or testing in the tank before starting work?
So Dylan, are we okay to approve the release of the findings?
Kristen circulated, I think on Friday or maybe yesterday, some correspondence for proposed contextual additions or changes that she and I and Terry and others have discussed. I think those would be helpful to make before the final report is issued, but as it is, I think that the report is in essentially its final form and would be acceptable to release if the board decided to do that.
Well, when we say release, I apologize. Do we mean for a limited audience? I mean, release not to the world, right?
Well, in this context, it would be released to Cablaco.
And that does not jeopardize district's position, you don't think, Dylan?
I think it would be better to make the contextual additions and changes that were discussed. But I don't think that there's going to be harm to the district's position by not making those.
I would think that it would be better to have released to everybody at the same time. Once it's released, it's released. And we have this on for the executive session later on. Can this decision wait until after that discussion happens? Or I don't know how much of this needs to go in there. I would like to talk about those contextual changes. I think, again, that there may be another format for those and where they're at. So can this wait until we hear all the factors at that point?
Yes, I'd prefer that approach.
I would agree.
Yep. Okay. We will hold off till executive session there on that. Let's move on to item C then, Terry.
Yes, 10700 West Exposition. What's this been the third time before the board? They sent me drawings this morning. We said too late. We're not going to address it. So it'll be next month. They did ask, because they're very close to Denver water approval. They said, would the board be willing to schedule a separate board meeting? I said, that's up to them, not me. And they would want you to pay all the costs associated with it if they even agreed to it at all. So they asked me to pose that question.
All the costs of what?
I'm sorry?
All of the cost of what?
Of the board meeting. So, the board members get paid. Sam or staff incurs costs when there's a board meeting. And in the past, when there has been a special board meeting called at the request of a developer, you know, the board would typically say, okay, as long as you pay our costs. Yeah, so you all get paid, you know, a small stipend, and Sam is present, whomever else, if the recorder is present, it'd be appropriate that they, whatever costs are incurred on those hourly rates be paid as well. So there's no cost.
So some of us don't get paid, and time is the, you know, the most expensive currency.
Terry,
And I have
Terry, did-
no compunction. I'm the messenger. Yes. Yes.
Terry, did they indicate if, like, they said they're close to Denver water approval? Have they had any back and forth with Denver water they've had to address, or just?
My personal opinion is they have not been covering that very well. Kristen, you know that you signed off on them, what was that, 2 months ago?
Yeah, on the conditional approval to start the process with Denver water, yes.
And told them via email, you're go ahead and submit to Denver. Well, we both know that that didn't happen until a few weeks ago. And so
they may not know for sure that they're close to a Denver water approval.
They don't know. And I raised that question. I said, you know, we don't want to do this at all. I mean, the board may just say no, and that's perfectly fine, but we don't want to do that, and you don't have Denver water approval by then. So this is dragged out, and to be honest, they don't seem to have all their ducks in a row.
Okay, I'm not in favor of extending an additional meeting, or I think this is around their processes and time management. So speaking for myself, I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah, this is one of those items I'd like to have wait until we have a district manager in place to engage, because I think there's some legitimate capacity questions that should be raised.
Okay, I agree with that too. I just think that the direct question from the customer is they're wanting us to have a special meeting and then us pay for it at some unknown time, probably prior to the next board meeting. That's my understanding, and I'm not in favor of that.
And some representative of a developer could have been here this evening to tell us their position.
Absolutely.
Kind of disappointing that they're not.
Unless there's some other opposition from the board, I'd like to move on to item D.
Yep, I fully agree. The construction project spreadsheet, there have been no real changes. Sam has uploaded all of the most recent information. I think he did that a while ago to the GIS. So it's in the district GIS system, and the status is pretty much unchanged.
Okay. All right, how about Alameda?
Alameda Water and Sanitation District. I don't personally have a lot to report, but we've been working, Dylan has been working on a memo outlining it. So maybe I'd defer. We've been revisiting. There are still a lot of questions and information that's incomplete the more you dig into the history. And Dylan did a nice job of summarizing all of the historical agreements in that. So I might defer to Dylan if he wants to discuss that.
Yeah, I can jump in here just briefly. I did, at the last board meeting, the board directed me to prepare a memorandum on this, and I had hoped to have it out for circulation in advance of the meeting, but there were some portions of the agreements that were not in my wheelhouse, and I wasn't able to understand engineering and technical specifications that I needed to rely on Terry and Kristen for. So they've been putting together a response to me on that. It is like so many things, the the way things were written and the way things were actually done is of course divergent, especially over a period of 50 years. But I think we are getting a much better handle on it. And I know that that's pretty spare on details, but hopefully we can direct the board to something productive soon.
Okay. Thank you for the update.
And I will offer that a lot of good information has come out of this that the district, both sides, Alameda and Green Mountain, weren't aware of. You know, finding out that Bancroft Clover is serving a property everybody thought was in Green Mountain. You know, little details like that that are being cleaned up through this process. So it's confusing a little bit, you know, trying to sort out the details. I think a lot of good is coming out of it and ending up with a clean slate at the end of this.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's talk about the ravine sewer crossing. That's your item F.
Yes. We did receive 2 proposals, King Surveyors. They were very close and comparable. King Surveyors just did a recent job for us, and they seemed to understand our question and were a little more responsive. So we proceeded to give them the go-ahead. Of course, with the snow, they'll wait on that until things are clear out there. But also, as requested, we prepared a preliminary design. We had done some conceptual work a year and a half ago, on routing for that potential alternate routes. And we went to the field, Austin, Dylan, Sam went out and GPS, we set some stakes. Sam went out and GPS those, so we have fairly close. It's not survey grade, it's not final design grade, but we put together a lot more detailed information and what a preferred route would be. That was in the board packet, a brief memo with a preliminary cost estimate, and we have a preliminary plan and profile for how that would be routed. When you're out there walking the site, it's up and down, it's pretty undulating. And when you go to lay out a sewer line, keeping it with enough cover and enough bury isn't as obvious or easy as it might appear, you know, because you have to keep a uniform grade for the sewer, of course, and then you find yourself with very little cover or almost coming out of the ground. Austin recognized that as well as soon as we were walking the site. But we have that report there for the board's consideration. We reached out, as you see in the packet, to a company who does truss type bridges, and we included their preliminary proposal in the packet so you can see the type of structure that would support it. Does not have a deck, does not have a bridge per se. So, you know, if there are any questions on that, we're happy to address them.
No, thank you. I did like the design. I did like the trust, and I appreciated your work, Ms. Buck, in putting together the other things, because one of them was an example of another trust like we had in some other part that kind of demonstrated that we have different support structures in place for different intentions. So this was probably was intended as a pedestrian bridge, and we put trusses in where we didn't want people walking on it. Was that a subtle cautionary tale in there, Mr. Kenyon, about the undulating ground? Is that something that means you have accounted for it, you surveyed and you buried, it's just was more difficult than you thought, or you think it's going to be undoable either from an initial or a maintenance standpoint?
I don't think so, Karen. It's just that, if you look at it less carefully, you might think, oh, there's another alternative. And in fact, the conceptual look I had a second alternative that tried to eliminate both bridges. Well, when you look at it in a little more detail and look at the elevations, you see that that doesn't seem very practical. And Austin and Dylan and I were walking it. Dylan wanted to see the structure. I think it was good for him to see that and be fully aware of what's going on out there. And, when you shoot some GPS levels and you look at the levels on Google Earth, which you can correlate pretty closely, for a pre-design level, you just see it's difficult to work and there aren't many options. Quite frankly, this one works, but I think when they originally did that in 1972, they probably did a pretty good job of picking a good place to cross. That's pretty much what I meant there.
That original spot that they picked, I'm sure it was great. Looks like from the old photos that the erosion is following now. People walk on it. It's gotten to be a bigger erosion path. Do you think that same sequence of events would happen at this new proposed site?
No, and the reason would be we would design as we intended, even if we were going to rehab the existing bridge abutment. We would work on the site drainage to prevent that from happening. You'll notice we have a barrier, cost for a barrier and signage in there. And some of you may have seen those. They're pretty big structures, fan-like, steel structures, that are pointed that really, you're never going to keep a teenager that wants to climb around and try to get on there. But they're pretty ominous, preventing access. It'd be legal signage, as we've discussed in the past. So that discourages the day-to-day, young kids walking back and forth all the time. And we would try to build sufficient in the grading so that the drainage would go away from it rather than towards it. Over the many, many years, that path became a channel for runoff. And quite frankly, Dunstan Middle School, when it expanded years ago, exacerbated that drainage issue, because there's an outlet pipe that comes off of the new Dunstan Middle School when it was done, and then finds its way to the path and to this bridge for erosion. So I think that's all preventable with good design.
And just to jump in here on both the signage and the drainage issues, I finally heard back yesterday from the Lakewood City Attorney that I've been working with on this, and they have had internal discussions about this. They are willing to put up signs or barriers, and said that they have in the past, and that all of their attempts previously have been torn down. So they're open to suggestions on what type of barrier and signs that the board would propose, or anyone working for the district. And they're also now willing to work on the drainage after, if the board decides to do something, some rehabilitation or relocation of the structure to remediate the drainage at that time. So that's the quick and dirty update from that.
Dylan, is the city aware of the preliminary design, and would you have any issues with sharing that at this point with the city, since they seem to be a little more cooperative?
This design that Terry's talking about, the relocation design,
Yes.
I don't believe that anyone has made them aware of it, although I have told them that the two paths the board's considering are rehabilitation or relocation. So I would have no objection with sharing this at all now.
I'd much rather have a willing partner in the city than an obstacle.
Yes.
I think so, because we'd have to begin negotiations for easement acquisition and working together with them on that. And as I've mentioned before, Ross Williams first brought that to our attention. The district and I have worked with him going back 30 years. And some of their parks people and surface water drainage people were out on the site with us. And at that time, they seemed cooperative. So I think that'd be a good approach. I would agree with that.
Dylan, if they've indicated they're would be cooperative with barriers and signage, is I would recommend considering the option to replace in the existing location if you want to change the structure to the truss kind of structure and address the erosion there. Austin, I think, has some comments about maintenance issues to do with keeping the alignment where it is. So Austin, if you're still on, if you could speak to some of that, please.
Yeah, I think keeping it where it is currently is, you know, the easiest path for us to get maintenance units to. So we're looking at that with Terry. Like he said with his other one, he had his other proposed spot that just, it wouldn't work at all for us doing any maintenance. So the crossing that he has proposed is an area that will work for us. It is down the hill, obviously a little further for manhole access, but that is a spot that we could make work. The spot's just a little bit easier because the manhole's a little bit higher up the hill with the current location. So the other one was, yeah, definitely a spot we couldn't even get to.
Is this more so access from the north then, Austin, from Montana and kind of that area?
Yeah, we drive in over the top there, pulled to about the top of the hill, and then we have to string hose or the camera all the way down to there and then try to run it to the other manhole. So it's, you know, getting the jet truck to a certain spot there and then having to pull hose down that hill and stretch it in there. And yeah, that's where the difficulty comes in.
Okay.
Well, it
Yeah,
sounds like
maintenance seemed to be a problem. I was talking with Austin, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and maintenance sounds like if we go with this alternative rerouting, I think that's gonna be a big issue for the district.
sounds like it was a big issue, but they have resolved the issue, so it'll be a little bit of an issue, but nothing that can't be dealt with. Is that right?
Yeah, I just feel like it would be, I mean, I guess from my personal opinion, if we could decommission the bridge and make it to where it's uncrossable and stabilized, I guess it's, you know, the same scenario there. It just seems like it would be easier in there. I don't know what cost difference there is between running a whole new line on that side versus making this bridge, you know, something that has fins on the front and stabilizing that, if that's an option. But yes, the other spot is doable. It's just a little bit more of a difficult spot than the current one. So.
Okay. Well, at least we have options. Looks like that's probably going to be another discussion that's going to be delayed, and there's still long-term ramifications of keeping it where it is. So we'll probably wait on that one too. Dylan, the city was aware we're talking about the 3 bridges with the signage and barricades?
The primary thrust of my conversation has been only about the one that's experiencing significant erosion, but I didn't get any impression that there would be any objection to all 3. Yes.
Okay.
So if the city, I mean, do they have any interest of those still being bridges?
It doesn't sound like it to me.
Okay. Well, I was kind of hoping if they wanted, they would just pay the difference between what our estimate was and that, and then it would help out Austin, and they'd still have footbridges for the pedestrians. Guess not.
So,
Okay, do we have any further discussion on the Ravine sewer crossing?
I'll just throw out, and this, I'm sure the board's already well aware of this, but when we talk about a barrier, a deterrence barrier, we've seen what Lakewood has tried in the past, and you know, anybody who wants to can take that down without too much effort. We're talking about structurally substantial barrier that would take quite an effort to do damage to. So just to be clear on that.
Fair
Okay,
point. I did think the cost difference in your proposal was significantly different than stretching caution tape around it and hoping for the best. So
Yeah.
Well, I assume there's no problem with just taking some steel and welding it across the entrance. I mean, that would establish intent.
Mhm.
yeah, steel and then putting fence up, you'd have to fence off around it. Yep.
I mean, kids are going to find a way to do what they want to do. So we just have to do our best.
Well, I'm kind of amazed Lakewood doesn't have a set of building standards for stuff like this. I think they have almost 1,000 parks here in the city, and all of a sudden they don't understand how to do something like this. So that's a little concerning for me. I'm sure they have they should have building standards around this. So
they had to okay the pedestrian bridge in the first place, and now they're acting like, oh yeah, no, we did. So let's not go there.
sketchy. Okay. All right. Any more on this? Okay. Terry, thank you very much.
All right,
I
thank you.
guess you'll be joining us for into executive session. Dylan, do we need Terry in there for the tank warranty issue?
Well, I guess that's going to depend on the questions the directors ask. I think that it would probably be beneficial to have him there, yes.
Okay, directors, does anyone have a problem with Terry joining us for executive session later on?
Well, no,
If
Terry,
needed.
yeah, if needed, and also maybe for just that section, so Terry doesn't stay, doesn't have to stay for the whole thing either. That's
We may need to ask you to step out at some point, Terry, but I'm sure you've done that before.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Terry, we can give you a call if you wanted to drop off when we're getting ready to roll into that. If you want to
Okay.
go live your life a little bit.
All right. I just let me know. Yeah, you have whether Sam or Kristen send me a text or whatever. I'll
Yep.
be watching for it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, sorry, you had flow monitoring on your written
Oh,
report.
you're right. I'm sorry. We got off on this, and there were those areas in the master plan where the sewer capacity was marginal, or the sewer, at under ultimate development was full. And in the master plan, it was recommended that they all be monitored. This has been discussed in the past and never been pursued. But I did reach out to Ted Miller Associates, does a lot of that type work. They rent the equipment, can buy the equipment. So we had recommended that, and in talking with Kristen and the district staff, made sense to get something formalized going. So I was going to get costing from them for different scenarios. for those designated areas and set up a monitoring program if the board agrees.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So you are in the process of getting those costs, or
Yeah, I
Yeah.
reached out to them and asked, can you provide a couple
Okay.
different scenarios? If they were to install the equipment and do the labor and everything, if they were to provide instruction to the district and rent the equipment, the district, to give us some estimates for various scenarios for the board's consideration. Yes.
great, thank you.
Okay.
My only, again, concern there would be is, flow can be measured different times, and then that would not be used as the only measure of having or not having enough capacity. Again, we may need to do an inventory on what's the actual taps at the end of a line, and how does that reconcile, with the capacity, I guess. And again, in light of the recent events, what's our safety factor? I don't want to be at 100% saying, we're okay. And then something that's not okay happens, and well, we're at 100% and we cannot provide the 125% that are actually needed at that time or should have been there.
Yes, and you're absolutely right that the flaw with flow monitoring is it's a snapshot in time, unless you're lucky enough to get one of the wet storms. But we can correlate it because we're fortunate having the 3 monitoring stations to Metro, and we can get 15-minute data from them. And in the master planning process, we actually did get, working with Jim Mallory, their chief engineer, who just recently retired, which is a shame. He was a font of knowledge. But we got, working with him, what they deemed the wettest periods based on their flow monitoring. So over the last 5 to 10 years, we looked at the wettest, we're looking at the 2013-15 floods, all of the wet periods. They directed us towards those, and we got that data, so we were using the peak. And to your point, Alex, what you can do with monitoring, because it's going to be a snapshot, you hope to get a good wet season, but we can correlate it to those storm events. We use the data, there are weather stations, you have the intensity of the different storm events, and you can relate the storm event at the time we were doing the flow monitoring to some of those peak times. And so you can get pretty good correlation to the worst wet weather condition anybody's aware of historically, and then also, then add safety factor to that.
One more question from me. I noticed on your invoices you had an issue over at 66 South Van Gordon. Looked like it took some time. That was on last month's January's invoice. What was going on over there?
Oh, they were working with Denver Water and the staff on the meter placement. In investigating the existing utilities, there was fiber optic, there's gas and all that. And they had some difficult scenarios and try to work out how they meter the property. So they asked everybody to attend. Josh was there. Austin, I can't remember if Austin was off that day, but there were a couple, Rob, Rick, Josh, Randy from Denver Water was there reviewing that with them. So it was related to them beginning construction of the water and sewer for there.
Wow, that was a big effort. Is that normal for that process? Was that built into the initial estimate for the cost?
Well, those are all reimbursable costs, so the developer pays those. And we also review their construction materials, the submittals, And that was included in that as well, Karen. So this was a little bit more than usual because we had to jump the potholes and they looked at different scenarios because they ran into a conflict, which with a lot of buried utilities is not unusual in construction. So it took a little more effort, but that's typical. And again, the developer pays all those costs.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
So when you say the developer pays the costs, do we get reimbursed for what we paid you if they pay for them?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
is that just, I've not seen, does that show like as a separate item on your invoice?
It's noted on the invoice that it's a reimbursable cost.
Okay.
When they send that to the developer, Doug sends those out, they receive it and
Gotcha.
they get payment. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, any further discussion on this? All right, I will, Terry will give you a text when we're moving into executive session, and I'm going to close out agenda item number 7 and open up agenda item number 8. Financial matters. Doug, are you taking this on, or is Kristen, are you working this? Is anybody out there?
Yeah, I didn't hear from Doug that there was anything out of the ordinary. I can cover this for the normal motions. Does anybody have any questions on anything in the reports?
I don't, I reviewed them all and they looked good to me.
You want to go ahead and make the motion to approve the
Yes.
financial matters subset A?
I move that we accept the financial matters subset A of the monthly operational expenses, income and expenditures.
I will second. Discussion? No discussion. Call for vote. All in favor of approving the January 2022 February daily monthly operation expenses and capital expenditures, say aye.
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 You have 5 ayes, no nays, so that passes. And then were there any discussions on item B, the January 2022 unaudited financial and investment reports?
I show nothing. I have no objection.
Okay,
Would you like me? I move that we accept the January 22 unaudited financial and investment reports.
I will second. Discussion? No discussion. Call for votes. All in favor of approving the January 2022 unaudited financial and investment reports, say aye.
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 We have 5 ayes, 0 nays, so that passes. I will close out agenda item number 8, financial matters, and we will move into agenda item number 9, district manager report. Kristen, you're on deck.
Sure. Do we have 2 directors who will stop by to sign checks, please?
Yes, I will be in. I'm one.
I can do it.
We'll drop in tomorrow, Todd. We have time tomorrow.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Moving into the district manager report. First item A, employee accomplishments and compliments. I just want to congratulate several staff who have anniversaries. Have had anniversaries in the past month. Rob Beckham is an inspector. He's been with the district for 22 years.
Wow, that's great.
Austin Pintano, 14 years. Jim Bach, 14 years, and John Scheller, an 8-year anniversary this last month. So these are all pretty high numbers. It's a good time to just update. I was filling out an HR metrics survey for some just general surveys in the region, and our total tenure of staff at this point is 213 years. So
Wow.
between all of the field staff and supervisors and IT and financial and customer service, 213 years in experience with the district. So I think
What's
that
the
one,
average? 10 years?
10 and a half. Yep.
Yep.
Speaks a lot to the longevity and the experience of the staff and the great customer service and great operational record that they have. We did receive a compliment from a relative of a customer who lives in Genesee. She thanked us and the staff for helping her mom. She appreciates that she's always able to get a live person on the phone, that we don't have, you know, robo response answers and things like that, that they're always able to talk to someone. So we generally get a handful of compliments like that through every month, which I think is great.
That is good. Tell the staff, good job.
Will do. Item B, the office HVAC project. The submittals from Cook Mechanical have all been approved by Integrated Mechanical, so they're placing orders for equipment. Right now, lead times, they expect everything to arrive and begin to start construction in the office about mid-March. So that's moving forward.
Any impacts to staff during this event?
I don't expect so. Maybe some general noise sometimes, but there shouldn't be too much. It's in you know, in the basement area, I think, and up through the stairwell. They have alternate routes to move through the office, and then when they're working in the garage, you know, they'll be able to move the trucks out and so that they can access what they need to on that wall and at the ceiling to install the new fan. So
Do we have any issues with critical fiber running? I know, you know, we have offices down there. Do we need to, you know, mark areas where the construction is going to occur? Is there any issue with possible damage to any of our fiber?
I don't think so. I don't think that comes through the IT areas, but we can double check that with Sam and Jesse and staff and make sure as they get to work that we understand where they're working and how things will route for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know that there are existing as-built drawings for this work, so it'll be kind of experience and staff's history and knowledge of the facility for sure.
Would Jesse or Sam be able to ring out their fiber or something like that to locate? Are there? I know they're online. You guys, did you have an ability to ring out the wiring for locate?
Ring out. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
We have a sensor that we can do that with. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, for like checking behind our walls.
Yeah.
The punch through for the fiber comes through right through the brick wall right there into the server room. So it's just there's a box outside and then it comes straight through. There's about 2 feet of run and then it hits the hardware. So as long as they're not actually working in that room, there's nothing they can connect with.
And everything else running throughout the building is exterior runs.
Okay, so Kristen, if you're, I don't know, is there a kickoff date for this? I know we're waiting for stuff to get here, but is there an estimated kickoff date for this?
Estimated to start March 14th, the week of March 14th.
So if you're, I don't know if you're, I guess you'll still be around or not. Can we make sure that you or with the new manager and the staff have a construction huddle to just do a sanity check over your operations and what to stay away from and, you know, those kind of things? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yep. See, stepping through the list. Item C, the CDM Smith wastewater master plan review. So we finally got through contract execution and sent them the master plan report. The engineer at Merrick who completed the wastewater study, who's most familiar with the files that should go to CDM Smith, has been out of town, and so we expect those files to be transferred here in this week. So that'll keep moving forward. But I've been talking with them about that work and starting to look for the how we'll come to the 6 sites that will be included for particular review. item D, property insurance schedules and liability coverage. So I sent a separate email about, we had the conversation about, well, not a conversation, we had email exchanges about the sewer spans that exists. I think there, I remember if there were 5 or 6 total. Those are not listed separately as on the property schedule for insurance. So we're coming up with estimates of replacement costs for those so that we can submit that and get a quote for additional property insurance, because they're not underground lines. They could be subject to other forms of damage besides normal wear and tear of sewer lines that we're generally insured for in some way. We do have liability coverage at the base level of 2 million, which in the email was noted that is sufficient for governmental immunity. But I provided the additional coverage schedule of premiums, and I wondered if the board has given any thought to whether you want to add additional liability coverage for liability. Did anyone have any comments or other questions about that?
I haven't really reviewed that to give you a good answer on that yet, Kristen, myself.
No worries. Okay.
Dylan, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask Dylan, I mean, I guess in the current legal area, are people being, I mean, do we need to carry more than the $2 million base? Is there something that we would benefit by doing that? I mean, is it worth the money?
Yeah, so those are hard questions for me to answer. More insurance is always good. As a local government in the state of Colorado, you have the benefit of having limited circumstances under which you experience liability, and also caps to that liability, which is the 2 million. I could probably come up with some circumstances under which it would be beneficial to have additional insurance, but none spring to mind.
Okay.
And I don't know offhand of my other districts whether they carry superfluous insurance.
Well, I mean, if the typical cap is that, and you said our liability is limited as long as we're doing things properly, I would assume.
Yes, that's a fair statement.
Okay.
One more item under there for property insurance schedules. With the damage at the high school tower, replacing that tower was going to be rather expensive, and it turned out we were able to reconfigure the communications, which presented some savings compared to replacing the tower. Additionally, we learned that because the towers at this time are not individually listed in the property schedule, they're subject to a $25,000 limit. So I've worked with staff to pull together a listing of all the towers and the radios to have them separately listed in the property as a property schedule. And that's been submitted to CSD Pool for a quote. So we can see what coverages they come to compared to a $25,000 limit, and whether you want to consider additional premiums to have those covered under the property schedule instead of under that limit for wind damage. So when I receive that quote, I'll send that out for your consideration.
For checking.
Is there any way we can roll that kind of stuff up into our asset management and risk, where we have like X amount of towers, X amount of tanks, those kind of things? It's kind of hard to, I'm trying to, understand that stuff, and as it correlates to all of this. So I just,
Yeah, definitely. All the tanks and pump stations and things like that, vaults, are all listed in in the property schedule with replacement costs. These are, I guess, looking through their smaller value compared to, you know, $1 million tanks and pump stations and things like that, but they are values. So we'll have to see, I think, when the quotes come back and compared to, you know, the risk of these events or how they're holding up. This one in particular was not, I guess, constructed properly. So the guidelines to it are actually, because of this, the location, the guidelines were not placed in the right directions. And so they were actually creating additional stresses rather than helping withhold those stresses. So that's part and parcel of what led to this damage.
So I know the state of Colorado has an issue or like your liability on workmanship. And I wonder, Dylan, if there's something we should be looking at with the original contractor on that. I know there's a limit to equipment or material, but workmanship's kind of a wide open thing. Could you check that Colorado law on that? Because if the guy wires were installed incorrectly in the incorrect direction, then that's a workmanship issue that maybe that should be addressed with the contractor that installed that.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have to check back too and see what records we have of that, or how long that tower has been in place. So.
Okay, thank you.
If you find that information, Kristen, can you send it to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, last item E, the employee handbook and personal time off accrual. So this came up, I get various emails about HR and compliance with state rules. So the wage protection rule issued a notice and opinion effective January 1st that accrued paid time off must be paid out. It can't, you can't limit rollover and not pay for that when you don't roll it over. And so that wasn't our HR or our handbook policy was not in compliance with that. So I sent out the revisions that would bring that in compliance. Dylan looked that over and updated some of the language as well. So that is presented for your approval to update the handbook policy.
Did everyone have a chance to look at that? Or I'm sure we need is that something we need a motion on then, Kristen, to approve the handbook?
That would be best. Yeah, just a motion to approve the revisions to the handbook regarding paid time off.
I move we approve the recommended additions, changes to the handbook.
I'll
I will-
second that. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Go ahead, Alex. Alex seconded. Discussion? Okay, call for a vote. All in favor of approving the employee handbook personal time off accrual modifications, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Believe we have a unanimous 5 votes of yay. So Kristen, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping up on that. Can I ask about those emails that you got to remind you? Did that come to you through CGRS? Would that be for will the new manager be getting stuff like that?
Some of those I think are just general notifications, yeah, that come to manager. I don't know if they got, like, if they've been forwarded, like if they're still being sent to Nina or if they're still being sent to Greg, and now they're to me. So those, as they show up, they'll be available for the next manager to see in either of our accounts and, you know, follow along with them or update where they're sent. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Kristen,
Yes.
without discussing the individual involved, do you have any update on the email you sent out to us about the Harvard Avenue issue?
No.
Satisfied?
No further information.
Thanks for, that was a difficult thing. Thank you you handled that well. So thank you for doing that. Great
course.
representation.
Has
Yep.
the reconnection fee been paid?
Not to my knowledge. I
would-
haven't checked this week, but I think at least when I sent that email, it hadn't been sent. I haven't been updated that it has been paid.
Do you know how much it is?
$50.
I'll pay it. I'll bring a check in tomorrow. I have a personal issue with the district having a sad episode of my neighbor across the street having died in his house after his water was turned off 2 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. I was not aware of that situation that I know of.
Yeah, staff is aware.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Gardner. I applaud your efforts.
Agree. All right. Kristen, do you have anything else under district manager report?
No, that was all of my items.
Well, thank you. And please, great job with what you're doing. And please let the staff know we're really grateful and proud of what they do.
I will. Thank you.
I'm going to close agenda item number 9 and move into agenda item number 10, directors matters. We'll move into A, which is district manager selection. We failed to come up with a manager after the interview last week, and we have put this on the agenda tonight. So I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to ask everybody for their final selection on the district manager. I'm going to start with Dave.
Ms. Dudley,
Okay. Karen.
I agree with that. It has been a hard, agonizing, and I flip-flop more than I usually do. I think we have good candidates in either way. So I want to say my criteria here has been to look at both of them from a standpoint of kind of 3 things. One was, I really think it is helpful to have an engineer in this position, and we widened the search to include that and the salary range to include that. And we came up with someone, 2 people actually with engineering. That the day-to-day management, all these things, the HR, and then also personnel and operations and what goes on. And I've been really trying to fit both of the candidates in those slots to figure out who I think would do better, especially after going through this meeting. Again, it was a lot of engineering heavy, and I think that Mr. Tyus has the education. I think he's used to working, as he said, with an in-house engineer, and it would be difficult for him to make that transition right here. So I am leaning toward Miss Dudley at this point.
It's a yes or no.
Well, I got to explain. I've got reason for it. After we delayed it, and I said I needed a basis. That
Okay.
is, we're not. This isn't a vote, so I'm just saying. You asked. That's it.
Okay. All right, Todd.
I'm going with Jeff Tyus.
Okay. Alex Plotkin.
I I am really struggling with this one. If either person has a different set of qualities that are all positive in different ways. So I mean, from engineering perspective, it's Ms. Dudley for me. From operational perspective, it's Mr. Tyus for me. So I'm still struggling.
Please make your selection.
Well, we could throw out a vote too, and he can do a yes or no at that point. I mean, are you asking for a motion to support somebody? Because that's where the votes come down, right?
All right, I will make a motion to decide on the new district manager for Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District for Sandra Dudley. Or I guess I could have to go through one at a time, right, Karen? If you want me to motion, right? I can't do both.
Well, no, you can't. If you're making a motion, then you are supporting, I would say that is your doing if you're throwing out the motion to support Ms. Dudley.
I'm just trying to get the decision down, and then we can motion to approve.
Well, you're 40% of the way there. I would say go with your motion. And then if she has 3 votes, we're done. If she doesn't, then we'll know where it is.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor then.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have discussion? No further discussion. All in favor for Sandra Dudley, say aye.
Aye.
I heard 1.
There's 2.
There's 2. Okay, all against, say nay.
Hey,
Hey,
We're done.
We have 3 nays. So I will make a motion to approve Jeff Tyus as the new district manager. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? No discussion. All in favor of Jeff Tyus being the new district manager, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a 3-2 vote. All against Jeff Tyus, say nay.
No.
Hey.
We have 2 nays. So we have 3 yeses, 3 noes. So the motion passes. Kristen, for Jeff Tyus to be the new district manager. So can you get with Dylan to send the email out notification that and apologize that we have taken an additional week. Explain to both candidates, this was, I'm just telling you from my own personal perspective, I don't think I've ever seen a closer candidate race for an interview that I've ever been involved in. So
I still like the idea of hiring both. One for operations and one for engineering.
I'm pretty sure that we would have approved that if that was the motion.
Well, are there options? Like I did say, I don't know that we are setting, that was one of my criteria. I don't know that we are set up to be giving Mr. Tyus the tools that he needs to do a successful job if he can't have an in-house engineer that he's used to having to trust. Is there an option to look at that or get it scheduled into the budget, something? What would be a next step for that? Is there any interest in looking at that?
Put that on the agenda item for new at the end, because it's not on the agenda. We need to put that on new business and notifications for next meeting.
Okay, I can do that if there is interest in doing it. That's, I guess, the question.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't want to do it here because we hadn't posted it for the public. All
I
right.
guess just to speak generally to that question, if the board decides there's a position or some other project or whatever it is in the course of a year that is not fit in the appropriated money for the budget, you can have a meeting to amend the budget of the current year. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thanks.
Second, in terms of this process, the last time a manager was hired, we would go into executive session. But before we do that, well, either before or after you do that, consider an action to appoint one of the directors to contact Mr. Tyus and make the offer, and then to negotiate any terms of that, including the start date and so forth. So that will be a discussion of the executive session, but one of the actions you will need to take in the meeting is to appoint the director who will make that call in that negotiation.
So I would like to appoint or make the motion to appoint Todd Hooks to perform the negotiation for the new district manager, or to present the negotiation package.
I'll second that.
Yep, second.
Sorry.
So we have a second. Do we have discussion?
So as far as like I mean, would it just really be the discussion of the salary or the benefits? Is all of that set? And does that really get discussed, or is it just literally salary?
It's primarily salary. Benefits are pretty well set, and then the start date.
Okay.
Okay. Any
So
further?
once that's completed, then the offer letter would be finalized, and that offer letter would go out with the package of materials that I sent to you as a draft.
Saw that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Okay, call for a vote. All in favor of Director Hooks representing the district to present the benefit package and wage negotiations, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
4. I think we have 5 ayes. So Todd, sorry I threw you under the bus there, but I think you'd be our best pick to do that going forward. All right, and then so Dylan, because we didn't post this for executive session, am I okay with adding that to executive session? Oh, I see it. I'm sorry. My bad. You're
Okay.
starting. Okay. All right. So we will move on to 10B, the Reptelis rate study update.
Yeah, so I just put that in here to as a prelude to the system development fee. There was a committee appointed. I didn't know if that committee has any updates, but prior to their update of any discussions, just to let you know that Doug and I are meeting with Reptelis again tomorrow to review the financial plan model that they've built and how that's set up in the couple of cases that they've run. We're looking at the variables and inputs that we can use for like setting the capital spending budget Karen had asked about, and how to set capital reserve rates based on that. And then looking at the models and cases that can be the range of cases that are considered normally for determining system development fees. And so they'll have that presentation for you as well. That meeting is scheduled as their presentation is scheduled for a special meeting on the 22nd. That date was selected by the board. Todd is available, but he will have to present remotely. He's at a conference at that time, but I know that you wanted to have that meeting in advance of a hearing, which has been noticed for system development fees at the March 8th regular meeting. So you would have the presentation by Reptelis, and you could have discussion at that meeting. And then the district has posted notice that system development fees may be changed on the 8th. And you could have more discussion at that time if you needed other considerations, and then or work through emails and updates about the resolution that you'd want to, for what fees you'd want to propose.
Okay, Dylan, are we doing, is everything sounding legal and sound on your side as we're going forward with this? Are we tracking okay?
Yes. Yeah, I'll let you know if you're not.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, Kristen, for that update. And then the system 10C is System Development Fee Committee. Does the committee have anything to update?
That was my question. Are they going to be ready for the 22nd? And is there a chance to, even if it's a working product, if it's treated as such, with due diligence, can that be distributed to the board for pre-review before the 22nd? So we have a chance to
I'll
just,
see what shape they're in tomorrow. I think they're pretty
Thank
well
you.
far along, and to have something to you in advance of the 22nd.
and thank you for sending those questions on too. So see if, they can just give us a little bit of homework or preparation before the meeting, so we're not,
Yeah.
sitting there with
Yeah,
with
and
wide eyes.
he's drafted response to your questions. And I gave him some feedback on that for some additional information he might want to include. And I think that draft is moving forward through second round and probably will come out too in advance.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Kristen, with your experience and all this stuff, are you liking what you see with Rocktellis?
Yeah, I think they're doing a thorough job. They did a great job of modeling the budget, following, the spreadsheets in the system and the formulation that's been developed through over time. And we're able to follow Doug's spreadsheets. They did complement, that our billing and all of our data supporting our budget are very comprehensive, and we're very easy to follow and go from there. So yeah, I think they've done a good job.
Okay, thank you for staying engaged with that. All right, if there's no further discussion on the System Development Fee Committee update, we'll move on to 10D. Director Plotkin.
Had the draft out. Dylan, did you see any red flags?
No red flags. I made just very minor changes and circulated that.
Thank you for doing that. So that's the copy that was sent to the board, unless anybody on the board has any glaring omissions that I've made or anything else. I would like to propose that, as we discussed before, with a link being added to the billing that's about to go out or has gone out. No, we had one about what, 2-3 weeks ago.
Yes.
So the next one. Is there anything else? Is there any formatting suggestions? Is there any, Kristen, can we just add a basic, kind of a header or something with a phone number for the district or anything of that sorts? I know in the past there's been pictures and all sorts of things. No need to be too fancy. And then post it on the website as well. That's where I'm at. So.
Okay, do we need a motion
Sure.
for approval of this newsletter, Dylan, Kristen? Or do we just go?
You can just go.
Okay.
It's a relatively minor thing for the district to do.
Okay, do any of the other directors have any comments or questions or anything else they would like to direct at Director Plotkin on the newsletter?
Director Garner, are you speaking?
Thank you, Karen. I have a content comment, and I mean this in the most respectful way to those of you that survived the recall. My recommendation to the board is move on. Don't discuss with a district residents something that happened in the past. I think it's counterproductive, and it only invites the people who had a reason for whatever good or bad it was to have an opinion on the recall that's negative, to re-engage with those opinions before the May election. I don't think that's productive for the board at all.
No, that's a well-received comment, because there was already that suggestion and I tried to carve quite a bit of that out. So if you think there's any specific items in there, by all means, should we, would it be okay with the board if Mr. Garner points out specific items and I can remove them or edit them, and then we can rerun it through Dylan and then post it? Would that be amicable to the board?
I agree with Director Garner. I think when you discuss or you look back and you keep poking at something, it's like a scab. You're gonna create there's things are trying to heal up moving forward. I think we run the risk of you pick at the
Understood.
scab, it could open the wound.
Yeah, so again, I removed quite a bit of that based upon comments from since last meeting, so definitely can remove more. If there's any specific sentences or just general words, Mr. Garner, do you mind just shooting a quick email, which specific ones?
I'll try to do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you, sir, appreciate it. So Dylan, is that still okay then if we make that edit and then it's posted?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further items or discussions on the 4 items under directors matters?
I would still like to suggest that Director Plotkin's name and contact go on that newsletter since he was the author of that. I don't know why I would, it needs a contact, and to have that directed toward the customer service or the manager or anybody else may throw them off. They weren't the author. It wasn't a staff-driven effort.
Director Plotkin, are you okay with that?
My email is on the website.
So would we add that to the
Sure.
that it's authored? Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion on agenda item number 10, I'm going to close that and we're going to move into agenda item number 11, legal matters. And Dylan, you have the floor.
Real quick, Jeff. Sorry, I just thought of something. Can I ask a quick question on that newsletter very briefly before you move on?
Sure.
If and the answer does not need to be long-winded. Do you prefer, Alex and or the entire board, would you prefer the content be a web page, or would you rather me do a light design and produce it as a PDF that's then downloadable with, you know, a little bit of graphic design around it?
PDF is fine.
Okay, and just some light design around it rather than just as the body of a web page?
That's fine too. I mean, whichever is easiest for you, Jesse. I mean, I don't really honestly have a preference on that specific one. So whichever is easiest to just.
Text going into a web page is obviously the easiest, but there is I think a design element that can be nice to just, you know, kind of tucking everything together on a thing. I don't know if the extra click inhibits reading though. So if you're okay with either direction, Sam and I will do some testing, some layout stuff, see if we can get it looking really good on the web page, and if we need to go the PDF route, we will.
Perfect. Fine. Thank you.
Okay, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
So most of my big matters were previously discussed during the meeting, that being Alameda and the ravine structure. I will circulate the draft memorandum on the Alameda agreements pending sort of final touch-ups with the engineering questions that I had. But I think it'll be helpful to the directors just to see the draft anyway. And I try to send out the litigation update email in advance of each month's board meeting. I did not get around to doing that. I have it ready to go, but was tied up today. There are no substantial updates for the board on the litigation matters. Briefly, the briefing process has begun in the Big Sky appeal. I haven't spoken with Scott Gessler on that topic recently, but I'm sure that he is preparing the answer briefs. The Young litigation appeal is now fully briefed, and that will just go to a division of the Court of Appeals for determination sometime in the next 8 to 15 months. I can't give a better time frame than that. But I will send that email out with all those documents attached tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Dylan, outside of the executive session?
Not unless the directors have questions for me.
Do not.
Any directors' questions for Mr. Woods? Okay, Jesse, I'm not sure how, or Jesse, Sam, how we move into executive session. I know Dylan, you'll have to read the sacred words, and then I was thinking it's 7:45. I think we ought to everyone take a bio break, and we move, say the words, move into executive session, and then we return at 8 o'clock, if that's okay with everybody, in executive session. And then Kristen, would you call Terry, and he will be first up in executive session at 8 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, Dylan.
We'll leave the recording on while Dylan reads everything, and then once Dylan's done, we'll stop the recording and leave only those allowed in executive session in the meeting.
Okay.
Do you want to say the magic words before we take the break or after? It doesn't matter to me.
Before, let's go
Okay.
ahead and do it before, and then after that, then the IT staff will clear the room, and then we'll take a bio break, and we'll have Terry back on, and then we'll start at 8 o'clock.
Okay, so I'm going to make a recommendation, and then that will be followed by a motion, a second, and a vote, and then we will be in executive session.
Okay.
So I recommend that the board move to and enter executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6402 sub 4E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, specifically concerning instructing negotiators concerning employment of a district manager. And subsequent to that, if deemed necessary by the board, entering executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6402 sub 4B and sub 4E for the purpose of consulting with me as the district's counsel concerning the tank warranty issue.
Do I need to, can I just say, can I just motion for executive session under the pursuance, or do I need to cite all of that?
You can just move simply.
Okay, I'm motioning that we go into executive session to pursue items A and B listed under agenda item 12.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Have 5 ayes, 0 nays. Dylan, go ahead and say the words.
We are now in executive session, and the initial, you want to do Terry first, the tank issue first
Yes.
for his convenience.
Yes.
Okay. As the district's legal counsel, it is my recommendation and an assessment that this executive session will constitute attorney-client privileged communications, and that no further record should be kept until this executive session concerning attorney-client privileged communications has ended. This is Dylan Woods, attorney for the district. The time is now 8:57. We have exited executive session for the purposes of instructing negotiators and discussing negotiating posture with respect to hiring of a district manager. Prior to that, the board entered executive session for purposes of receiving legal advice concerning the tank lining matter. The attorney-client privileged communication of the first executive session was not recorded. We are back on the record. The participants in the executive session were myself, the board members, interim district manager Kristen Buck, and Terry Kenyon for discussion of the tank lining. We are now back in open session.
All righty. Karen, would you like to make the motion?
Sure, I move to release the Mattergenics draft report to Cablanco for the purposes of review and getting the tank back online, and to continue with the second opinion that will also review the contextual material for an overall vapor pressure report.
I second that motion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Believe that passes, 5 ayes, 0 nays. I'm going to close out agenda item 12 and move into agenda item 13, new business and notifications for next board meeting. Director Morgan, I believe this was where you wanted to post something. Trying to remember what it was about.
About our new manager. Because I obviously had more to say about that whole discussion. Although I can understand after the last drawn out discussion how you would not want to re-enter that, but I do have some concerns about how things are going to go. Is there any interest in discussing supplemental engineering support at this time? Wait and see how it goes.
Yes,
That on the agenda. What are you thinking?
yes.
Yes.
Yep. I think that would be a good discussion point, Karen.
Okay.
I absolutely agree. I think we're incredibly deficient as a resource for the board, not having an engineer that works directly for us.
Can I ask then, and I know it would not work with these two individuals, but is that an executive level kind of job, Mr. Rose, that we need to go through this big application and open interview process for?
No, I don't think that in-house engineer would be that type of position.
Okay.
That would just be a straight hire.
Because
It's not a staff position, so it's like what Dylan says, it's an operations level. It's not a staff position.
right. Like I said, because I did too, if it were, like Director Hook said, it'd be great to have them both on. Okay, so put that on the agenda for next month, couple months,
Next month.
next month. All right.
Next month, please.
Okay.
How do you want the topic to read under Director's Matters?
Why don't we put it as discussion for engineer on staff?
Okay.
Discussion district engineer.
Just occurred to me too. Did we talk about onboarding? I mean, we haven't done that. We have the motion and the negotiations, but if he should start in the next 2 weeks before we have another meeting, do we want to meet with him? Does anybody want to do that? Do we go in and say hello? He'll just work with Ms. Buck until we come up with the process next time?
I would like to come in and say, introduce him and talk with him. And Dylan, is that okay for us to have a couple of directors do that?
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have 3. Don't make any decisions for the board.
Okay, so would the board like to make a little welcoming committee out of the 5 of us? I guess I'd like to have Karen as one.
Well, I would make a recommendation, Jeff, that the president and vice president meet first, but then
Okay.
the other 3 directors meet separately.
Okay.
Not at the same time. So he has a chance to get to know all of us and we get a chance to know him and what our concerns and interests are. It's only fair that he knows those things.
I will get with Director Morgan then, and we will discuss what we're going to be talking to him about. And then if the other members would also, if you would like to talk with each other, no more than 2 at a time, and then give us input for the meeting. Does that sound, am I tracking right, Dave?
Well, I thought you guys should meet first and then just, as time permits, we meet with him one-on-one or two-on-one, doesn't matter.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, I will set that up. So Director Morgan, you and I will, I'll give you a call and we'll set up something after we hear from Director Hooks, if he's successful. And then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Okay. Are there any other new business or notifications for the next board meeting?
Just a note, not that any of you will care one way or the other, but I presume we'll all be back around a table by next month. I will be out of state, so I'll be joining you by Zoom.
Okay, and I think that expires, the mask mandate expires mid-February for Jeffco, if I'm not mistaken.
18th, I believe.
It expires on the 18th. That's
Okay.
correct. So the 22nd will be a virtual option. And in fact, Todd Cristiano will be presenting from a remote location. He was not available to be in person on that date that was given. And then the regular meeting in March and going forward will be hybrid meetings. Basically, there'll be a note on the agenda that there's a virtual option
Okay,
to attend remotely.
thank you for that update.
Sure.
Okay, with that being said, I'm going to motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Okay, discussion? No discussion. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 We have 5 ayes. I want to thank the staff. Hey, 9:06, we're getting better.
Yay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Good job, everybody. Look forward to, I guess we'll talk. Todd, we'll wait to hear, I'll wait to hear from you. And then if you would inform me and Kristen, and then of course, Dylan, I guess, let Kristen and Dylan know what you find out, and then me, and then that'll trigger the meeting. And then once Director Morgan and I are through that, then I will explain to Mr. Tyus, if he's accepted, that we will be having some follow-on in-person meetings.
Sounds like a deal.
Thank you, everybody. Please have a good week and stay safe.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good one.